Hello and welcome to Pivot Talk, brought to you by Known New Haven. I'm your host, Bob Bishop from Apex Growth Consulting, and I help businesses accelerate the process of scaling while they enjoy the ride. Thank you for joining us, whether you're on today's live broadcast or whether you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube. Today's Pivot Talk is focused on inclusive entrepreneurship. We're very fortunate to have guests today with substantial experience in that space in the New Haven region. Before we get to them, though, I would first like to introduce my co-host at Pivot Talk, Juan Salas-Romero. Juan?
Thanks, Bob. Happy to be here. It's exciting, the show today. I'm looking forward for a good discussion.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's been a few weeks since we've been together for this, but it's exciting to be back and continue to hit important topics for leaders and managers in the region. Would you like to give us a quick outline of the what Pivot Talk is trying to do within the greater envelope of Known New Haven?
Sure, Bob. Well, this is program number 9 or number 10 that we've done ever since May, when we started creating this Known Life, which is a space, a virtual space, as part of Known co-working space that we opened back in October of 2019. And Pivot Talk is shows about how companies pivot and how they adapt to change. And we've had anything from how architecture changed due to the pandemic to Olmo Kitchen. We have the owner of Olmo Kitchen here and showing us how the restaurant world, pivoted. We got wellness. We had all kinds of shows that we have, escape rooms we even had here. It's part of this whole ecosystem that we started. When COVID hit, that we had the space, ready to start growing it. We had to close our doors back in March of last year, and we opened it back in July. But that didn't stop us from building community and developing all these shows. We're interviewing about 8 businesses now. We're showcasing about 8 businesses in New Haven, and we just recently started our first cohort of entrepreneurs for the BIPOC entrepreneurs. Something that we are working in collaboration sometimes with our guests today, and we hope to be talking to them thoroughly today.
Yeah, and I guess I would add, going back to the last spring, our first Pivot Talk was actually you and I having the conversation. Clearly Known was right on the forefront of having to significantly shift what was happening, or at least what was happening what people are seeing on the outside. But clearly, what we were still able to do is create some things like what we're doing today that are still focused on helping the type of people that we've been looking to help one way or the other all along. It's just had to be through slightly different means over the past few months. So it's been an exciting shift. It's been exciting to be with you and through these very interesting times.
Likewise, Bob. Always appreciative.
So as we move to today's show, I would like to introduce, today we have 2 guests that are joining us from our neighbors at Collab, Caroline Tanbee Smith and Margaret Lee. So good afternoon and welcome.
Hi, everybody. Hello.
So yes, thanks for joining us, and we're excited to talk both about your organization and also some of the bigger picture thinking that is going on behind and around what Collab is doing and what Known is doing. So it's a great timing.
Perfect. Yeah, really excited to be here.
So I'll as an initial toss-up question, I don't know who's the best person to answer this, but share with us a little bit about the beginnings of Collab. What brought on? Certainly there's a need in that space that we all see and understand. But how did you decide to when to pull the trigger and exactly how to execute on that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm not necessarily the best person to answer it, but I will answer it. So it started a few years back. So we've been around for about 3-4 years now. And when Margaret and I first met, we've been in New Haven for now around 11 or so years. And when she and I first met, we were both working in New Haven. We both fallen in love with the city. For me, I was working for a local startup called SeeClickFix, which I think a lot of folks are aware of, started by Ben Berkowitz and a crew of awesome folks. And doing a lot of community organizing and just getting really involved in the city that we all love. And then Margaret was working at what was then called the Yale Entrepreneurial Institute, which is now called Sci-City, and was leading on a lot of programming and venture programming for students and for faculty. And so we met in New Haven and really bonded, not initially over necessarily starting an accelerator, but as former Yale students, could we create more community spaces where Yale students, especially those who had real stake in the city and loved the city, and New Haven residents could come together to do sort of collective community problem solving or community efforts in a mutual space, and really build community power together. And so we planned an event series for about a year, met a lot of amazing people, and from there sort of identified that a lot of individuals that are coming and attending these events who are excited about the city, who are invested, who had stake here, also had these kernels of ideas that could become business ideas, could become independent projects, could become nonprofits. And when folks were asking and hungering sort of for more from these events, we kind of looked at the entrepreneurial landscape at the time and saw that there was a gap in early stage programming to support these individuals that were coming to us, residents coming to us who had ideas to really have them materialize and come to fruition. And so the next iteration of us and the next iteration of this event series was Collab, as it is now, a program that then takes those kernels ideas and supports individuals with a particular focus on people of color and women, particularly Black and Latinx entrepreneurs who face those persistent and significant barriers to entrepreneurship because of racism and sexism.
Great, that's a great background, and it's been so it's been 3 or 4 years that you've been on this journey so far.
Yes, yeah.
So I want to say something, Bob, because I'm really an admirer of our guests today from ever since I guess they started. And part of the reason why I really admire what they do is that I've seen how they've been progressing or evolving in this whole concept. And being a real estate developer myself for about 12 years in New Haven, I could see that asymmetry between, what they typically call town and gown, between, people who are really in the periphery of the developmental stages in terms of business, in terms of education, all that, and those who have the, access to a global education that have the possibilities of really rise. And, I would say that Collab is right in the middle of those two worlds, really connecting those two worlds together and really making sure that those who are in the periphery, they actually could come in and blossom. So, I commend what Margaret and Caroline has done. Actually, when we started working with the whole concept, Margaret was invited as part of our focus group to kind of realize, what's missing, what do we need. So she gave us some great ideas. And with Caroline, I share with Caroline some boards, certainly the Board of Liberty Community Services for homeless. And I've been witnessing that, all these other boards that, she's just been part of it. So they're really invested in the city of New Haven. And so it's one of those things where you're actually walking the talking and grassroots organization. So I just wanted to express how I feel in terms of what you guys have accomplished, because it's really admirable what you do, and hope that you continue doing what you're doing. So one of the things that I'd like to ask always in this program is, what are some of the challenges, opportunities of the COVID era? You guys were 2 years age, and then all of a sudden COVID hit. And what changed? How was that? What changed in the organization, and what changed in also the cohorts? How do you see that happening? And what do you think is going to happen? What's your outlook?
Yeah.
Great question. And thank you for your really kind words, Juan. I think we feel very similarly about known and knownpreneurs. The opportunity to sort of work together in an ecosystem to support all different kinds of entrepreneurs sort of down the path, and making sure that we're doing that in a really coordinated, collaborative way. There's just so much sort of explosive potential if we were to work together. So I'm always so excited to see all the great work that you're doing, and are so supportive, and our organization is so supportive.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for COVID, when it first hit back in March, we went remote really, really quickly. And I think that in general, one of the trends we saw was a huge dip initially in engagements. One of the ways that we measure engagement is by how many people sign up for office hours, which is a program we have where folks can sign up for sort of 30-minute slots to just talk to us about their idea. That dipped pretty drastically, sort of March, April, May, and then it really shot back up. So May, June, all the way to about September was a very steep and steady incline, back to pre-pandemic levels and maybe even above pre-pandemic levels. And in terms of our applications for our program, they didn't go down at all. And then sort of more statewide, we saw trends of folks starting businesses at a really high rate. So more incorporation of businesses and things like that during COVID. And so for us, I think, and this is partly why we're so excited when programs like Knownpreneurs ramp up, is that there's so much demand for these services. People really want to build businesses. They want to use entrepreneurship as their pathway towards economic autonomy. They find it exciting, interesting, stimulates their creativity, really energizes folks, right? And so I think this time period, when I think a lot of our institutions, a lot of the ways that we've been living and doing business is kind of called into question. I think we're all sort of taking a step back and thinking about all of the little and big failures that we've witnessed in our society over the past year. And I think many of us may be thinking, like, what can I do differently? And I think a lot of folks are turning to entrepreneurship just as a way to be independent, and as a way to sort of exercise their autonomy at a time when there's just so much uncertainty, and they feel like they can't necessarily rely on some of the institutions that have supported them in the past. And so there's definitely something there. I think, there may be more national data on how many business starts have taken place since the pandemic. I don't know that for sure. So that's one trend to definitely name. The other is a sadder one, which is the closure rates, and specifically the racial gaps between the closure rates of current business owners. Lots and lots of Black-owned businesses, for example, have shuttered during COVID-19 as compared to white-owned businesses, as one example. The amount of PPP loans that have gone to Black-owned businesses is extremely, extremely disparate from what went to white-owned businesses. There are structural reasons for this, obviously. And so, thinking about sort of the need to support entrepreneurs, and specifically to support Black, Brown, and women entrepreneurs feels really sort of important for us. Other ways, that our program has changed. We've gone virtual, like I said. We've started providing hotspot and laptop rentals for folks because the digital divide is real. And if somebody doesn't have, steady access to a device and internet, they can't participate in our programs. And so we've done that. We've spent a lot more time talking about just our emotions about the pandemic and sort of how we're dealing with this new world as entrepreneurs, a lot more attention to that, and a lot more attention to our graduate entrepreneurs. So we have about 75 or so folks who have graduated from our program over the years. They're still trying, right? Even if there's a pandemic. And so we've directed a lot of capacity to supporting them in the past year.
Margaret, if I may, out of those, 75 former students, I'm sure there's all over the planet. There are ones that probably continue. Some got a job. Some are continuing to develop companies. Could you comment in your experience, what has been like the ingredient for you in terms of making this a sustainable venture for those who have come to you, gone through the accelerator process? And what would you see as what are the takeaways of that experience in their, I guess, career path?
So the question is, how have we supported entrepreneurs in the past year, or
what have you found to be the ingredients, the elements that are the indicators, so to speak, that will help someone who with this entrepreneurship mindset and start a business to actually have it, become a sustainable business down the road? Because you have data that probably is a 3-year data or 2-year data, are there some of the levers or things that I'm like, okay, this is an early indicator, and these are the kinds of things that really have helped this case versus this other case? Just like to understand how that career path works.
Sure. That's a really interesting question, Juan. It makes me think about all of the analysis that we can do across all of our ventures. Obviously, we track metrics like how much revenue have they generated, how many jobs have they created, how much follow-on funding and things like that. But there is a lot of work that we could do to try to create some sort of correlation between certain kinds of ventures or entrepreneurs sort of to that data. So having said that, right, anecdotally, I can kind of share my experiences of just observing entrepreneurs and supporting them. I think 2 characteristics really come to mind for me. 3 characteristics really come to mind for me and what makes a successful entrepreneur. The first is like a really relentless commitment to the customer or the constituents they want to serve. I think that's been really, really clear across all different kinds of entrepreneurs, no matter what the industry is, and a real love for customer. I think that's been one key component. Another is a team. I think folks who are able to form teammates or form teams, or at least create quasi-team members by accessing network resources and reaching out to people and just being really embedded and connected. That's another component. And then the third, I think, it has to do with just emotional wellness and emotional authenticity. I've seen folks who are able to come to us and talk and say things like, hey, I'm really struggling, right? Or, hey, I went through this big life thing and it really derailed my venture and I'm trying to be really nice to myself about it, but I'm struggling. People who are able to have conversations about how they're experiencing their journey and to be authentic and honest with us and with with themselves, I think sort of contributes to a sense of resilience and grit that I think is somewhat of a secret sauce for entrepreneurs.
And I'd like to chime in on that. Thanks, Margaret. I think I loved that breakdown. And I think in witnessing those characteristics, that's really ended up informing our programming as well. And maybe you can see that across all 3 of the characteristics Margaret mentioned. So for us as a program that supports really early stage entrepreneurs, a good portion, especially the first half of our 12-week program, focuses on the customer, gaining that intuition and the skill set and the toolbox to be able to communicate with customers, interview customers as part of a sort of evolving process of being able to mitigate risk for that entrepreneur in being able to feel confident about investing in next steps for their venture, given what their customers are saying that they want. As it relates to emotional wellness, that's, I think, really connected, has become, what Margaret said, I think increasingly connected to our theory around programming. Can we combine a curriculum that really brings together, sort of high touch business support with leadership and professional development, such that exactly what you said, Juan, if we can support and affirm the entire human who's a part of our program, and not just their idea. Their idea is the thing they're coming to us with that they're most excited about now. But exactly what you said, Juan, some ideas don't work out. Something like 20% of business ideas won't be moving forward. And so success for us looks like an entrepreneur being able to leave our program and being able to get another job, run for office, become an organizer in their community, and or be able to take their idea to the next level. And I think especially in COVID-19, I think something we've seen, I think Data Haven had a great op-ed about the connection between emotional well-being and economic well-being. And so as a program, can we support individuals in building that confidence such that they can rebound stronger if they inevitably meet challenge or failure? And then the only last thing I'll say, because you sort of mentioned metrics, one thing we track alongside what Margaret mentioned in terms of follow-on funding and revenue, and we'd be curious to have a brainstorm around this at some point, is we also track confidence and connectedness post-program. So, and this is self-reported data from our entrepreneurs saying as a result of their program, do they become more confident, more connected? And that's our beginnings of saying, some of these qualities are going to be ineffable and unquantifiable. Probably some of the most important things in the world are unquantifiable, but can we quantify some of these aspects that we think are critical to economic well-being and the health of an individual? And so we're beginning to do, or we have been doing some of that work and are excited to see what that looks like on a deeper level.
Amazing.
Yep.
Thank you so much. There's a lot of knowledge here.
Yeah, there's a lot out there, right, that's coming out about people realizing that, right, your EQ being as critical as your IQ to success, and people having that more balanced way of coming into business or organizational settings. That is very key. Margaret, you mentioned, for share to both of you, you mentioned something about seeing a lot of startups, or the volume of startups through last year, jumping significantly, and that actually brings up a point that I wanted to ask both of you about. Is if you'd seen things similar. We actually have a quick chart that I think Rick's going to pull up for us. Thank you. That talks about startups in the U.S. and just showing, I think just intellectually, I think we all probably would have expected that 2020 would have had a greater volume of startup business, but looking at some data from the Economist here, it's not a small increase that we saw last year. This was reported in Q4, so I don't have the data on exactly how 2020 finished, but it certainly was significantly different than the 10 years prior as far as that volume. So that aligns very much with what you were sharing in your experience of what you're seeing locally. But I guess I'd also like to either, whether we think about it that nationally or what you're seeing locally. I mean, what does that mean for organizations like Collab? Is that an opportunity due to the volume of people that are now taking this path, or are there challenges due to trying to manage that volume, or some combination of the two, or something I'm not even thinking about here?
Yeah, sure. Like I said, I think for us in the past year, what we've seen in terms of demand for our services maps on maybe not quite to that, because that's a pretty stark increase there that Bob you're putting on the screen, but definitely an increase in energy, and definitely at the very least sort of a sustaining of how much interest there has been for our programs. And definitely at a state level, we know sort of factually that there's been a higher level of incorporations. So I think we are seeing that. I think there's renewed interest in entrepreneurship as a pathway, and an increased interest in that among service providers like us, institutional funders, and folks with stake in our community at large, as well as individual entrepreneurs. So I think all of those things are true. And I think that how I would interpret that is, like, yes, as Collab, as known, as whoever, like, we need the capacity to serve more people and to serve them better and more deeply. So that's feels very true to me. And I think this, what we're seeing trend-wise, sort of contributes to that view. And I think there's a real opportunity for us to do things collaboratively. So sort of thinking more at an ecosystem-wide level, like, what can service providers do in concert with one another to make sure that we're sort of, all of us are showing up at the table aligned on values first of serving anyone who wants it, with a focus on people who have been left out historically, Black people, Latinx people, women, immigrants, etc., and just making sure that those folks are served most especially now. And then doing things together, coordinating a little more, talking to each other. And, I think with that kind of work, there may be some exponential benefits that organizations can kind of create together that I think is really exciting too.
So in that line of thinking, Margaret, I think that you have a particular experience with an organization called CDC, and how do you guys focus on food entrepreneurs? For the benefit of the audience, I'd like you to comment on that, because I really think that this is when you go from a broad program to specific and really connecting the dots, so to speak, and really bringing organizations together. So can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, definitely. You're 100% right. We had been doing kind of general cohorts for a couple years, and then City Seed, who they do a range of different things, but they're really involved in the food justice space. They run the farmers markets, and they reached out to us because they had done a small pilot cohort with some of the immigrants and refugees who are part of their sanctuary kitchen branch of what they do. They had done a small cohort business program to support those folks, and they pulled us in after they had done that pilot project to do a fully fledged food business accelerator in partnership. And the reason why we were interested in that, it's our first industry specific program. There's a couple of reasons why. One, New Haven's such a foodie city, so there's a lot of interest in food in this particular city, and that's something among many things that makes New Haven special. And then two, food is a really interesting industry. It, on the one hand, it can be fairly inaccessible with the large capital expenditures required to run a restaurant, for example. But if you're interested in catering or creating a food truck or creating a product line, it can be a fairly accessible industry. Especially, for folks who have been cooking in their kitchen, their family recipes, or, folks from immigrant families, like me and Margaret, who, cook with our moms and dads and pull down from their recipes. That can be incredible, fertile fodder to create really businesses that can be really supported by a community or by a city. And so that's been our first foray into industry-specific programming, and it's been really exciting. Our food business accelerator is very oversubscribed. Our outreach, we have a very intentional outreach strategy, but is probably of all our cohorts the one that gets the applications so fast because so many folks are so interested.
So, Carolyn, do you need a couple of volunteers to taste the samples?
You are so welcome to do so. We have some we have some great ventures. We in this particular cohort it's running right now, we have a cupcake cocktail bar, fusion bar. So get ready for that. We have a tortilleria, which is sort of a branch or an arm of the Semilla Collective, which is a mutual aid group that formed to support immigrants and refugees during COVID-19, and now they're interested in creating a cooperatively run tortilleria. So lots of samples that can be tried now or very, very soon. And the last thing I'd say is just, I think this question, I think, is really really appropriate given what Margaret just said around the importance of collaboration. I think us and City Seed can do so much more together than each of our organizations can do alone. We do almost all of it very collaboratively, but City Seed's contribution in terms of understanding the permitting and licensing process, having a commercial kitchen space for entrepreneurs to be able to rent for free while part of the program, are just very catalytic for entrepreneurs. And so, and then I think, for our experience in early stage entrepreneurship, and I think coaching and our kind of theories and our frameworks around that it creates a pretty great combination, and we're excited for more of those prospective partnerships.
That's awesome, man. It seems like it's more of on the pragmatic ways, or kind of you go from there to actually handling or managing a food business, which it gives it a bigger impact, in terms of the economic impact that the program is designed for. Totally. Of course, the general program might be your your baseline, so to speak, and then it creates some industry specific. Do you see any other industry you're going into?
That's a good question.
Just trying to challenge you.
Yeah, I think we've explored, like Make Haven, for example, what an incredible space like has supported individuals in creating obviously specific prototypes that could eventually become products. That's something we've been in conversation with them about before. Also, I think one thing that is also special at New Haven is the sort of the depth of community-based arts programs and artists. And so the idea of being able to support the creative sector and artists would be really exciting for us. And so I think there are a few industries that feel very New Haven and are really emphasizing the local talent and what's desired by the community. I think are industries we would be excited to support. So again, the premise being like, what kinds of businesses does New Haven want to see? And how can we best support those through potentially industry-specific programming?
Do you see some of that experience scaling to other places other than New Haven?
Yes. Or did you ask?
Yeah, the Collab model, is this something that you could see that taking place in, I don't know, another sister city or something like that?
Definitely. So right now, for us, we're open to anyone in Connecticut, but we have a focus on Greater New Haven. And I think one of the critical pieces of bringing in a model like Collab to other organizations or other cities would be, I think, a real attention to the local city and the desires and the needs of that city. Because I think for us, the secret sauce of what's made us successful in the past 3 years is a foundation of relationships with organizations, basic needs organizations like Junta and Iris that are working on the ground to support folks, management teams who are able to spread the word about our services, as well as like push us and challenge us to be better for the entrepreneurs, especially that they know well and they work well with. So I think that would be a key part of replication of the model, is that kind of intentional local support and outreach.
Right. And do you see Yale as a key element in this ecosystem? Yeah.
I think Yale can do a lot. They have space, resources, networks, and there's a lot that New Haven can benefit from in that. And I think there's a lot that Yale can benefit from New Haven being vibrant and thriving.
Awesome. Very good. Bob?
Yeah, actually, we have a couple of images that we wanted that we've borrowed from your website, and we'd love to kind of put those up and have you give us a little insight into what happens and a little bit of the details of operationally Collab. So let's start here.
Yeah, great picture. Yeah, this is from Collab Pitch Day. So it almost breaks my heart a little bit to see this picture because 3 of our favorite days of the year are our pitch days, which is kind of the culminating celebration of our cohorts. And we used to do them in person, obviously, before COVID. We now have a virtual celebration, which actually we did this past fall/winter, and it was actually pretty amazing what can be accomplished in a virtual space. But this was at the State House. Up there, you can see on the board our mentor network, so folks who have been supportive in mentoring our ventures, and that's us kind of setting the stage for entrepreneurs. And we always try to pay special attention to bringing a lot of folks into the room who are excited to support our entrepreneurs, because for a lot of them, this is their first time pitching. Sometimes first time really telling folks about their ventures, especially in a more formalized way with a group of 200 folks on stage. And so it's a really exciting event. Here are some audience members.
I've been there. It's really, really exciting.
Yep.
I see that.
Yeah, I think I attended maybe the first one when you shifted over to the State House, and it's it's a great it's great to see the results and of your cohort's work and the fact that they've been able to pull things together in a manner that really you can see that they've taken what is usually a lot of great energy and a lot of great ideas, and actually been able to coordinate them in a way that it puts a great presentation together. Right, it's exactly what you need if you're going to expand, going to look at partners, going to get funding and such. And so I think it's it's really exciting to see that.
That's great.
Thank you, Bob.
Anything else, Rick? Okay, well, that's what we have. So great. So actually, I'd like to circle back. We used the title inclusive entrepreneurship as we were planning this meeting, this session, and titled that. And so, and we've certainly talked about a lot of elements of that. Are there any other things that you'd like to share as under that umbrella, and or things that are important for us to think about going forward with supporting entrepreneurs in the New Haven region?
Yeah, I mean, I guess some initial thoughts to that question is, entrepreneurship has always been a critical driver for an individual being able to sort of gain wealth for themselves and for their family, and has always been a driver, or has often been a driver of wealth for potentially a neighborhood or a community. And I think, for us, we define entrepreneurship as taking a risk on behalf of the community. And we think that inclusive entrepreneurship is the ability for any individual, regardless of their background, to be able to utilize that pathway to support themselves and the people that they love and the community that they love. And I think that, I think that those are some I think initial thoughts, sort of the guide. I think that what guides us in the work that we do.
Yeah, and I think what I would add to what Carolyn just said is that inclusion must be backed up by sort of an attention to an individual's lived experience, as well as their specific barriers, and programming that actively and very proactively addresses that, right? And so, entrepreneurs never do it alone. Entrepreneurship has been inclusive of very privileged people for decades, since the beginning. But they never do it alone. They do it with a network of people, and they do it with funding that they have access to, et cetera. And so if we're pushing inclusive entrepreneurship, it's very important that we try to replicate as much as possible the level and amount of support that an entrepreneur receives normally from the network that they have access to. And so I think that's kind of how I would cap what Caroline is saying, that, entrepreneurship should be inclusive. And in order to foster that, we really need to sort of like bombard folks with as much resource as possible, so that they can have a journey that's similar to the journeys of a white person who wants to start a business. Can we create that kind of environment? And so that's what I would add to that.
Absolutely. So let me ask you something about New Haven in particular, and what you just said. What are other organizations are there for entrepreneur to look at into kind of like planning that, being able to see a pathway, in terms of, what are different tools that you see in the city of New Haven when you leave your program, or as part of being in your program, that could be helpful for entrepreneurs. And this is more a question so that the folks out there who like to apply to your program and like to see all the resources are able to understand that, hey, New Haven, there's all of these resources available. You should take advantage of.
Yeah, great question. Well, I think we're lucky to be in New Haven. Just the building amounts of assets that are in organizations that are supporting entrepreneurs. Some that come to mind, this is not in a totally inclusive list, but the New Haven Free Public Library is a tremendous resource, especially for anyone who even just has like anything from sort of a passing curiosity about entrepreneurship to, an already established business and needing support. Gina Bingham over there at the sort of Ives Square section of the library. Yes, such a tremendous support. You can literally just walk in, probably not right now, but before COVID, you could walk in and be able to, have someone who's attentive to your questions. Another organization that comes to mind is the City of New Haven Small Business Academy, run by Kathy Graves and Jerry Garcia. just a program that's existed for a while and has been very supportive of entrepreneurs. They also have a program that folks can apply to, and they provide a variety of different technical assistance. They also have kind of other programs. I couldn't list them all, but including they have a holiday village on the green that sort of takes individuals who have been in their cohort or other entrepreneurs and be able to actually have space for them to sell their wares, which I think is really tremendous. That connective tissue from educational programming to actually space for them to become vendors. And then lastly, of course, Known is a great program, especially for organizations that are excited about growth and scale. So, if folks graduate from Collab, Known is a tremendous program for them to go to after graduating from us to receive just further assistance, further community, and further mentorship. The list goes on, but those are three that really come to mind that I think folks should definitely, if you're an entrepreneur, should definitely turn their heads to.
Thank you. Happy to be in that list. Looking forward to many networking events and educational thoughts and support for entrepreneurship. We enjoy having you and connecting with you, and hopefully in a couple of months. I know you bought a membership at Known and you barely use it because COVID hit, but we're hoping to have you in this space pretty soon. So Bob, take it away.
Sure. Yes. Again, this has been a great conversation. Thank you to you both for joining us, and also for sharing some of your insights and some of the background of what's the thinking that's made Collab so successful so far, and what we're quite confident will continue to make it successful, or even more successful going forward. So. Thanks again to Margaret, and thank you to Caroline. We'll let you guys go backstage here, and again, thanks to Collab for being with us today, for you guys being with us, and for the organization letting you guys have some time to join us. So in general, as we work on wrapping up here today, again, thanks to everyone for joining us today. Be sure to link to us on social media. We are known as available and connectable through Facebook, easy for me to say, Instagram, and YouTube also, through the addresses that are on the screen right now. And if you have an organization with an interesting story, we'd love to talk to you. We'd love to look at finding whether it's appropriate to have the conversation like we're having today. Or certainly we have resources, as we referenced, that work to help organizations on their journey towards their goals. So certainly offer those to you. And any final things you'd like to share from the Known side, Juan?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanking again Caroline and Margaret for coming to our program. Very exciting to have our 10th program, probably 9th or 10th, but whatever it is. But to keep doing this, I think it's just helpful to build that ecosystem that Margaret was talking about. In terms of new news, we're basically hoping to open up Known for more and more members, and right now it's open, but we still have the social distancing and the mask and all that, and it's going to be there for a while. But it's available for any entrepreneur or any remote worker that wants to come in, and we are as flexible as you can imagine. I mean, anything from give me an hour of Zoom booth, and we have that product available. So check us out at nhvknown.com. And in terms of Knownpreneurs, just want to make sure that you all know that Knownpreneurs is really designed for businesses that are up and running. That sales are between $50,000 to $500,000. So we're really looking to recruit entrepreneurs in that segment of the market. And the next cohort is going to be in September. We're going to be running applications during the summer, and we're also connecting those entrepreneurs to capital sources, as well as networking in the marketplace. Some of the things that we like to do is not only to teach entrepreneurs to give them the baseline or the supportive services, but also be able to connect them to potential markets that they could expand during their tenure at Known. So more of that will come as we develop. But I think for now, Bob, thank you so much for putting this program together. Really enjoyable.
Yeah, really enjoyed the show, and for those watching either live or on delay, watch for the next show. We're putting together our early April show as we speak, and we'll be releasing those details soon. So again, thanks to everyone. Have a great month, and we'll see you soon on Pivot Talk.